Welcome to the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here with my co-host, the wild, wonderful Haley Pindle. Hi, Haley. How are you this morning?
I'm doing super wonderful. How are you?
Great. I'm great because we are here to help these wonderful people in the world that may have stumbled across or intentionally found our podcast to function at their best in health, fitness, and life. So let's get fired up.
Let's get fired up. We are here to serve you, and we're fired up about it.
We are fired up, and we are fired up about the growth, your personal growth, your professional growth. And we are also super thankful for those of you who have clicked the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and or if you follow us on Apple Podcasts or what's the other one?
Spotify. Yeah.
Spotify. So if you haven't done that yet, it's a simple, easy, free way for you to support the content so that it can get discovered by more lovely people.
And we'll appreciate you so much.
Yes, we already do appreciate you, but there's tiers and we'll appreciate you even more.
Exactly.
Oh, this is great. Okay, good start to the show. Before we hit record, we were just talking about time audits because Haley was assuming that I waste time. I'm just kidding.
You were claiming that you're wasting time because if you're on the YouTube channel, you will notice that Emily's hair looks ratchet because she didn't curl it.
I was claiming that I'm like, this is my au naturel hair, which actually has curl. If you want to see it, go to our YouTube channel. These are my curls. Yet, so often I blow dry my hair and then curl it with the curling wand. Why do I do this? I don't know. Why do I do this?
I have absolutely zero business complaining about your hair because mine's always greasy in a bun. So it doesn't matter. It was actually super funny. I was on a potential client call, so like a sales call the other day, and the first thing that she said, she's like, "Wow, you look like your content." And I was like, "Is it the bun? Like it must be the bun."
Is that good? Well, it's so funny. I saw a friend who I hadn't seen in years that I went to university with this past year, and she's followed our content. And when I saw her in person, like, run up, give a hug. How have you been? She's like, oh my goodness, how are you? You look great. I mean, you look like you do in your content. The same thing where you're like,
was I supposed to look different? I don't
like, because you haven't seen them in a long time in person, but they feel like they've seen you all the time, which we were just talking about this too, where you're like, if you're the type of person who you're on social media platforms and you don't really make posts or you don't ever put up pictures or videos of yourself, for us, we're like, how are you guys doing out there? Like, we don't know what you look like. Hi. So you feel like you know us, but we don't. This is just me saying, hey, we would love to get to know you. You know, you can put a picture up. It's good for your mental headspace and embracing who you are as a person, your facial expression, your body, all these wonderful, unique things about you that I often wonder that. I'm like, are you not putting a picture up because you're like, I don't want anyone to see me? I don't know.
Absolutely. You know what? I think that's the underlying thing because that was me until I started posting, right? And then you just have this newfound confidence that you don't just wake up with, but after posting so many times and like you looking so embarrassed, it's so embarrassing. You just get desensitized towards it, and it's like, yeah, I do this for a living, and it's
just what I do.
Fun, so
it's so fun. Well, it's interesting because, okay, speaking of that, I was mulling this over in my brain. We were just talking about, again, before we hit record, we were blabbing away, talking about, different phases of your cycle. And when you feel more like analytical or contemplative or overthinking or indecisive, that luteal phase. Or when you're just like, life's amazing, let's have fun. I'm not, maybe more impulsive. I'm never that way, by the way. Just kidding.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know.
Most of the time. But anyway, we were just talking about this, and I was contemplating this morning as I was getting ready, being a creative. So everyone has creativity within them. Like we are all humans have the ability to be creative. There are some of us who kind of lean even more on the like creative spectrum, like higher creative, higher chaos versus if we're on like a chaos order spectrum. And so this is something that has been a lifetime battle for me. And I was thinking about it with the time audit thing, where I find sometimes the more I always think I need to be more organized, right? And so I need to track things and I need to have schedules and calendars and lists. And so I will go through these phases where I'm like really intense and really like good about sticking to all things organization. But when I'm doing that, I'm like forcing myself into it, which is okay for like getting outside of comfort zone. But sometimes I feel like my natural creativity will decline during that. So I was literally looking up, I was YouTubing, like, how do I allow my creativity to continue to flourish while get like being more organized? Because then there's times when I'm like not organized and I'm missing details, but I'm like in these hyper creative modes and I'm like making all this like exciting content because I'm just like full creative fun. But then I've like forgotten to sign my kid up for something. And John's like, did you not do that? And I'm like, no, I was in my creative mode. You know what I mean?
I'm just a girl, okay?
Is this making sense to you? This is where my
Yes.
brain was at this morning.
I relate a lot to that. And what I found with myself is so before when we started the podcast, I didn't like Google Calendar. You know this. I would
Oh,
just show
yes.
up here. I wouldn't know if we even had a podcast. I would just show up at 8 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Now I really like Google Calendar. However, I am the worst time blocker ever. If you try and put me in a box, I'm like, no, get me out of here.
It's your
However,
rebellion. You're like, I'm us.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I can't schedule myself to like the last minute. I know some people are really good at that and really good at like just following the rules, but I'm like, I need to have a task. I like to put things down because if they're not out on paper or in my computer, I'm going to forget about them. There has
Yes.
been many times where I forgot about calls or forgot about doing stuff, and it's like, it's not in the calendar. I'm not doing it. So I just write my little tasks that I have to do by the end of that day. And that has worked wonders. So I kind of have that like creative, like if I'm in flow in the morning, which is typically when I'm more creative and like have my content ideas and things that I want to
Yes.
work on, that's when I do it. But then I also have the things that I need to do and get done by the day. So more like admin stuff I push towards the end because my brain's tired and I just want to like enter stuff in the computer.
Yeah, that's good. No, it's amazing to be able to like adapt, right? I don't know if I
Mhm.
brought this up before. The listeners are like, "Oh my gosh, you bring this up all the time. What's wrong with you?" But or maybe not. I don't really know. I'm going to say it again or maybe for the first time is what you just said about even like using Google Calendar. I found I like being able to this sounds like crazy kind of, but as a creative person, I like being able to pick different colors for different things. Like this sounds so silly
All
and
of mine are blue.
no, mine are literally like if you look at one day, you're hilarious. Okay, if I just have like a black and white checklist, I'm like, this is so boring. I can't follow this. Kind of like what you said, like I'm not following these rules. I don't want to be a boring person. If you do this, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to offend you and call you a boring person. You're great and you're amazing. But my brain is like, I want color. So I will like color. I will like, if you look at one day, like everything I have on that day on my calendar is like a different color.
That's
And there's not even
hilarious.
like a color scheme, like where it stays the same. It's just as long as there's lots of colors on each day, I'm like a happier person.
Here's my brain. This is what my brain's doing. It's like, oh my gosh, Emily, you're wasting so much time.
No, it takes like 1 second to change the color. You just like, as you enter it in before you save it, you just like click what color you want. It's like a 0.5 second detail. Come on.
You do you, girl. You do you.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, when we look at the time auditing thing, I have definitely done them. And it's so funny because I will do extra details like that, but I will just like fully max myself out. Like I remember most of the time. I remember doing it like the last time I did one, I shared it with like a business mentor coach that I have. And he was like, oh my gosh, you literally are always doing something like every second of the day. This was that whole thing that we were talking about with rest, right? Where it's like, yeah, that is an issue for me for sure. That's why, like, when we went on our camping trip and we were completely unplugged, and I was like, ah, full rest. I'm like, no, I will do everything at every, like, every moment of the day, but they're not always like hyper productive, like you said, where you're like, why are you like being extra weird with your colors? I don't know. Because it's like filling all my time.
You need some kind of fun in your life. What I find too, like I'm the exact same way. I feel like it's more like type A people be are like I need to be productive. Anything outside of productivity is I'm gonna be a lazy person. But
Or
if
the falsity of wasting time, right?
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
not, you're
wasted
not.
time.
We were John and I was talking about that. I always bring him up. We talk a lot.
We
Um,
love John.
we do, but it was like wasting time in a good sense. Like when you think about quality time, if we're like my kids and I, or our kids and I, and John and I are just like sitting on our back deck, and we've just eaten dinner, and we're now just like sitting around, and they're just like telling us fun stories, and we're just like sitting there. That's it. And it's like a nice evening in the summer. That would be like essentially wasting time, in that you're not like being hyper productive in that moment, but you're being so present, and you're this like the depth of this quality of like letting your child just like tell you their story that they're so excited about is a good waste of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm actually reading a book called The Comfort Crisis, and it kind of touches on that, where this guy, I forget the name of the author, but he goes out for like 30-day treks in the wilderness.
Mm.
And we are so programmed to be like productive or like have all these distractions. Like we can't go on a walk without listening to music or listening to a podcast. Like we can't be bored, which
Yes.
is a problem because then that takes away your creativity, because in this boredom and your mind starts to wander, or you're sitting there with your kids and they're telling you all these fun little stories, like then your mind gets to wander and rest rather than like being on your phone and taking in all of this information. Like you might think that that's like rest, quote unquote, like scrolling, but it's not, because there's so much information that your brain is trying to take in and process. So actually being bored can be really good for your creativity.
Yes. Okay, Haley, you just nailed. I say this to my kids literally anytime they tell me that they're bored. When a kid does their class, they're like, "Mom, I'm bored." Every time I say, "Good. Boredom precedes creativity." So, for all you who are listening out there, boredom precedes creativity. That's
Yes,
so exciting.
exactly. And that's something I'm trying to practice now. So, like, rather than, because I always used to have like YouTube going on the background, I would have music, podcasts, all like, I need two types of stimulation.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now I'm trying to just narrow it down to one and be okay with being in that uncomfortable state of like, I need this chaos going on, because it's not super helpful for my nervous system to have a bunch of things blaring at me, right? So you've got
Yeah.
so much information being taken in. And then what I found is I get into this like paralyzed kind of state of like, I have absolutely no ideas, but I have every idea known to man kind of thing,
Yes.
but none
Yes.
of your own. So,
That makes so much sense. This is where when I did the Lent challenge, where I had the periods of silence, where you're like just sitting in silence. Remember, I think I told you about this somewhat, but it started with like 5 minutes. Your timer's just on in the background. You're like 5 minutes of silence, then 7 minutes, then nine, then whatever, right? And it works up throughout your time of doing it. And then I got to the point where I could be sitting in silence. One time my timer got shut off, and I was sitting by the river, and I was like, it has to have been the 25 minutes. And then I looked at my phone, it was like 40 minutes. And I'm like, oh, my timer stopped running. But it was amazing how much more yeah, like people really struggle with that sitting in silence. That's like a huge thing. But it's amazing how much clearer your mind gets. It's pretty cool, but it's kind of
yeah.
what you're saying.
Like meditation that sometimes people practice, and you can hear people say, like, oh, I can't because my mind's so busy. Where it's
Mm,
like, well, maybe that's why
you need
you
to
should.
train it. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that is. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're not just going to be good at something right away. That's the hardest thing. It really is, right? Like in any aspect. The number of people that say that, and we've talked about this for different facets of things. Like we both love self improve, like let's get better at this, let's keep pushing ourselves, let's get outside of our comfort zone. And I don't know, I can't keep track of which episode, but a few episodes back we did talk about communication, and you asked me a question about public speaking, because this is a huge comfort zone thing for people. one, being on video and being on stage, or just being on stage, or just being on video. Either of those things I think are huge. And I think it's different for different people, like your capacity, right? Of like, what would you be comfortable with? Would you be comfortable to in like speaking to 10 people in front of you? Would that be really scary for you? Would it be really scary? Or is it fine, but it's not till like there's 100 people you have to speak in front of, or 200 or 500 or 1,000? Like, what's your number? How have you done
Mm.
where you've spoke to a large crowd? Have you done that? Is that
Um,
scary?
no, not in person. Well, actually, yeah, I have definitely in school, but that was back when I was really bad at public speaking and I was super like insecure about what I was saying, and I did absolutely terribly. Now, I think now though, now that I've been, we've been podcasting for what, has it been a year yet? I don't know.
We're
Um,
coming up on a year in the beginning of August.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Happy
Woo!
anniversary.
Yeah.
Um and then like also like creating content and essentially like that like even thousands of people are going to be watching that piece of content. I've gotten a lot better. So it's a really roundabout way to say it's probably 10 plus people. I definitely think I could speak to 10 people for sure. The
Yeah.
cap, I have no idea.
Yeah. No, I was just interested to know because I feel like it's interesting how you can work things up in your mind. Like I think about it for competing in gymnastics. I got to the point where like when I competed in China, it was like million, like there were thousands of people in the stadium, but then it was broadcasted throughout the world. So it's like millions of people viewing, right? And I remember getting to that point in my gymnastics career, like I'm not speaking, but just thinking about being in front of crowds, that it didn't matter. Like I was just honed in on like so much of it is training that you're like when you train yourself to hone in as if there's no one in the room, then you like the rest kind of almost disappears. So this is where like I'm horrible. I've had to untrain some things as a mom where the person, someone in the room will be like, your kid's been calling you. And I'm like, oh, whoops, sorry. Because I can just like, if you're talking about, I can just narrow in on only you and like hear nothing else. Really helpful as a doc with patients. If there's other stuff going on in the clinic, I can hone in on one person really well. And that's just from years of gymnastics training of like, there's no one in the room and I'm just honing
Yeah,
in.
that's
that
so interesting.
that I have used for public speaking.
That's very interesting because I also was really good at honing in on just like the task at hand, whether it be like sports or I used to dance in high school, and there was a lot of people in the crowd, but I would just like go balls to the wall, like in terms of like moving my body or performing in that way. But if I were to like say some lines or be in a play, like there was no way in heck that I would be doing that. But dancing, it was very fun. Like great. I loved it. Loved that experience. Rather than like the speaking part was very hard for me.
Okay, this is a great segue, Haley, into how to hack your brain especially if you're a kinesthetic person. Have you heard of power poses?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the same principle is like when you think about it, if you're going into a scenario wherever you have to speak, even if it's an interview, maybe there's only two or three other people in the room during the interview, but you're nervous about it because why? You value and really want to get this job, or you're competing against other people who are interviewing and like you don't want to lose, like whatever the psychology is behind why you might feel nervous in this situation. Or maybe it's just that you're thinking about, am I going to say the right thing? Or am I going to give an answer that they want to hear rather than focusing on, well, I just need to be myself. They just want to get to know me, right? And be confident in who you are, regardless of whether it's what they want to hear or not, right? Well, what people will do, and the same thing happens in an interview scenario as it does if you're going to speak to a large group of people. Same things, you're walking out on a stage, they're judging you in a sense of like, what do you look like? They're looking at your appearance, they're looking at your body language, they're looking at your facial expression, they're looking at so many details, the way you move, how animated you are, and then the actual content of what you're delivering. Like people will leave a scenario and be like, yeah, I've heard that before. I already knew that. People could make a comment like that after you speak and you'd be like, oh, really? Thanks. I feel great. So there's a lot of dynamics to any scenario. So let's just take those two, walking out on a stage or going into an interview. a thing that people will do, if they're there ahead of time, a lot of people will intentionally arrive early to an interview because they don't want to be late, right? So if you're late for an interview, you're for sure not getting the job, by the way, because that shows like you're not going to show up to work on time. But so you're there early, and let's say it's the type of setting where there's other people already there. There might be they might have stacked interviews in a row. So you might now be in like a reception area sitting with like two other people that are also doing the same interview as you. It can feel awkward and you can feel really nervous. So what do people automatically do? They today's day and age is like we go to our phones. So we're like, well, I'm just going to numb and be on my phone, even if I have nothing to do, whether it's scrolling or whether it's like hyper checking emails. You're going to distract your mind because you're nervous. But what your body does in this scenario is your shoulders roll forward, your hands come in, you're in a closed body position, your head is down. This is the defeated lobster position. So when you think about lobsters, they compete for territory, and the dominant lobsters always grow bigger. And if they win, they keep winning against less dominant lobsters. The more a lobster wins, it changes in their brain. It actually creates chemicals that grow them bigger. So they're more likely to keep winning, and they're more likely to have more female lobsters, and they're more likely to have a bigger territory. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
So big lobsters get bigger, they win more, they have greater territory, and they actually hold their little lobster body position in a more expanded position. Whereas the defeated lobsters, the non-dominant lobsters, will be like in a more closed position. They will have less territory. They go into a fight with a bigger lobster knowing they're going to lose, and then they do, right? So when your same thing happens in your brain as a human, is like you're sitting there in this, like, I'm calling it the defeated lobster or the non-dominant lobster position, the closed body position. And your brain is already telling itself you're not in a great state. You're nervous. You're scared. You're already defeating your own mind before you go into the interview or before you walk on stage. You bring that in your body language and in your facial expression. And people know it. They know you're not confident in that moment. So what you can do instead, you walk into an interview scenario, there's other people in the reception area, go to the bathroom. If you know you have time, go into the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror in the bathroom, and literally just open your body language, like chest, like open in a chest stretch. And if someone walks in, you just be like, yeah, I'm tight today. If you feel like you need to make an excuse, you're like, yeah, I'm feeling really tight from yesterday's workout. I'm just doing some stretches. But what you're doing is you're doing these power poses where everything is open, like take up space. The more space you take up, arms wide, chest open, legs wide, you are telling your brain you're in a state of dominance. If you watch dominant people walk into the room, not that you're trying to dominate other people, but you're trying to tell your own brain to be dominant and confident in a scenario. If we were in a lecture hall and we were watching people walk into the room, the people who are like the super confident, whatever, they spread out. They sit down and they drop their purse and they open up their stuff. And it's like, oh, wow, did you just take over the whole space here? And they'll sit like open, versus the people who are nervous. They will come and they will like take the least amount of space.
Yeah, cross their legs.
And they will cross their legs and they will cross their arms. So you can see it, right? Mm-hmm. And so even if your tendency is to lean more towards the like closed body, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I can't do this type of feeling, you're hacking your own brain chemistry by forcing yourself just to open up your body language or your body position.
Noted. Oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
really
know, but that would have been very interesting to know when I was, even now, like I feel like subconsciously, like you can go into a kind of situation that makes you nervous and just inherently do that. So just kind of having that in the back of mind where it's like you can actually control like the outcome just by your body language and like changing your state.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you can train yourself to have cues, right? So if you attach it, then it's when you're developing a habit, it's cue, routine, reward. So you give yourself a cue, you do the same routine, your brain gets the same reward, and it's like basic psychology, right? So if let's say you have a lot of speaking events or you give a lot of presentations at work, and every time it makes you that same level of nervous and you get fumbly and stumbly and you feel like you suck at speaking in front of people, you need to retrain that cue. So you pick something. Okay. So maybe it's just a tap on the thigh. Your hands down at your sides, you just tap your thigh to tell yourself like it's go time, but you keep the same routine. So people do this in sports all the time, right? They do the same warm up. They listen to the same song before they're going out to play the game. They hop back and forth. They get their body moving. They do that same, like there's athletes that will do like the same number of hops every time. Like they keep it so super consistent because they're telling their brain it's go time. And so for you, they don't have to be like extreme cues. You don't need to pretend you're being a boxer before you go on stage. But if you have little things where you like snap your finger a couple times and you do that every single time before you do a power pose or before you do a couple stretches and open up, people will do this if they do acting or they're singers, right? They'll do the same like la 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 la's. I don't know, I'm not a singer, but they'll do the same voice warm-ups every time. All of that is cueing your brain that you are going into your confident game face go time mode. So you need to do that with your speaking as well.
I
It's
need
going
to
to
do that. Yeah, I
it's
need to
going
do
to
that
change
with my
everything.
content creation. Every time I go into my filming session, I got to
Perfect.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes so much sense, right? Because it's just telling your brain it's go time. And so then all of this to say, like anything, it's always the background foundational work that which seems ridiculous because you're like, well, you haven't even told us what to do when you're actually in front of people yet. It's the prep work that matters the most.
Yeah. And it's just like principles that you follow, right? Because even if you try and go into a speech per se with a script, you're so much more likely to mess it up than if you just go in there with some bullet points and some principles that you want to hit and let things flow a little bit better.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the flow that I have used, Haley, and I've spoke to hundreds of people, groups of people, because I had periods of time where I spoke in schools after being a high level athlete. I'd get invited to speak to classes or whatever, and I've always liked public speaking. I've spoke in church settings. I've spoken like women in business settings, right? And something that a flow that I developed for speaking over time was if I had a specific keynote. Okay, so I've done a keynote, I called it Courageous Connections, and it's how to communicate with the purpose of connection. So the same way people will say, like, dress for success, it'd be like dress to connect. Everything is oriented around connection because really that's what we need in our workplaces and our businesses is we need to form those connections and networks because you can't live in a vacuum. It just doesn't work. For all these people who are like, I want to be successful, guess what? You are going to have to interact with a lot of other people to get there, right? So that's what my keynote was about. So what I will do is I always want to start with the format of having like a hook essentially. So that really like locks in the emotion. So something that grabs the attention on an emotional feelings level. That usually involves something maybe a little more dramatic and usually weaved in with a personal story or a story of someone that I've interacted with that opens up where you're going with the keynote. Then I will go into something interactive. So try to draw them in and kind of get them involved right out of the gates. Then I usually have three key like take home points that are really clear. And within that, you can kind of structure like weaving in stories and whatever else. But those are supporting like, here's the big three that is going to help you connect better. Okay. Then what I do is I take all of that and I bring it back into something that really, a story that like solidifies that emotion, solidifies the feeling that I want the crowd to feel, and that's kind of like the ender, and usually like tie that in with a call to action. Like what can you do from here? What can you tangibly take home with you to do? So that would be like how I would speak to a group. And it's really amazing because I mean, depending on the setting, well, actually, wait, sorry. Before I say what I was going to say there, how I would go through that is I would actually type out everything or like voice to text everything in detail, the stories I want to use, some of the terminology I want to use within it. But then what I do is I have this like big script that if you're never going to stand there, it's not going to be a good keynote if you stand there and read. So what you do is when you practice it beforehand is you practice through your script a couple times. Then once it starts to be in your brain and you're tying it, you might be trying it with pictures or slides, or maybe you're not using that at all. Either way, you can hone it into these cue words or phrases. So you get to the point where all I would need to remember is like one word, and that word triggers the point, and the point triggers the story that goes with the point. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So you can bring like your whole thing that you've practiced that was in more detail. You can remind you basically just within a few bullet points can bring your whole speech to mind.
Yeah.
But the key is you have to prepare and then you have to practice it.
Yeah. It's the practicing part too. Like I try and bring that into like content creation. Like what you just mentioned is exactly how I like to script too, where it's like you have all of these epiphany bridges and you like allow the audience to understand at a deeper level. That's more like it's not like the jargon that you're using that only people in that, sector would understand. So I'm trying to actually. This is what I'm using my TikTok as.
Oh, cool.
To
Okay.
just like face my camera and like try and practice that with my brain and like pick a single topic and bring my brain through that process of like here's your hook, here's like the stat that you're gonna whatever, how are you gonna hook the people in, who are you speaking to, like how are you gonna call them out, and like your points, epiphany bridget through it, another point, epiphany bridget through it, and like the CTA. So like having that be in practice mode rather than like typing everything out and trying to practice everything. So that's just something like I'm trying to do rather than like I'm very heavily reliant on like I love typing, I love writing. That's not something that I need to practice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I need to practice the actual structure of it. So TikTok is great.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's interesting because something that I found a big shift within being on stage to being on camera is when I'm on stage, I'm walking all over the place. I'm coming down like what the keynote series I did that was really fun. I actually like came in on stage like walking on my hands because it just gets people roaring, right? They're like,
Yeah. The
"Whoa!"
shock factor.
That shock factor. And so then I'm like there, and then I start talking, but I'm like constantly really like moving in and out and all over the place. And I found at first when I was on camera, I'm like, okay, I'm standing, if it's a tripod, I'm standing in front of my camera. And I feel so unnatural because I'm like, I'm not like weaving all over the place, right? And so that was a big shift for me. I mean, if you have a camera guy who can like follow you around, that's great. You
You
know,
don't have the budget for that.
no, not yet. But yeah, so that it's funny, right? Like just what you're saying, different settings having to be like, okay, how can I adapt this and try to still look natural? And then the other thing is what you said about like, who are you speaking to? I find if you know the group ahead, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this keynote at this specific event. I know that it's going to be mostly women in this age category who are entrepreneurs. I know exactly what I'm saying to them, right? I have spent way too much time in the social media world kind of like neglecting or forgetting to really visualize who I'm speaking to because you're not physically in front of them. So that takes practice too, where you're like, I
Yes.
need to spend some more time actually visualizing the person or the crowd because that goes a long way for sure.
Absolutely, especially in like the social media world now. Like if you're not speaking to someone, you're speaking to no one, right?
Mhm.
Because there's so much content and you have to learn to create your own blue ocean in a red ocean essentially. But
Yes.
it's really difficult when like it's just you and a camera and you have all these ideas and then you can also have the like oh, this idea led to this thought, and then this thought led to that thought, and you're very kind of scattered, and then you end up talking as a very broad, vague kind of sense, which won't hit for anyone because it's like you're not inside of my brain. You want to be inside of their own
Yes.
brains. Yeah.
Totally. The other thing, Haley, I was thinking about is feedback. Okay. So once you actually are on stage, people will say things like, picture the crowd in their underwear. Okay, I don't know. That one never worked for me. My thing of like if I still firmly believe if you can train yourself to get your body and mind in a good open expanded state before you go on stage, that is the number one thing. If you get that rise in the butterflies and you're feeling that nervousness, or you're feeling kind of sick to your stomach, uh, really try to cue your brain. That's excitement. You're enthusiastic. You're passionate. You're coming in hot, right? Not that you're freaking out. So reframe that. Then allow yourself to settle in. Like most people have heard me talk, they're like, yeah, if it's a close friend, you can have like a real deep nitty gritty, like tell me the truth, how was it type of conversation. They'll say, oh, you seemed a little tense in the first like maybe 2 minutes, but then once you like delivered that emotional story, you just like caught your groove, and then you just go and you can feel natural, right? So give yourself the space where like you might have a minute where you're like, okay, yeah, get in the zone sort of thing. Which is saying, think about like a hockey game, right? There's times when the players are on the ice and you're like, they look so tense, and why are they not connecting their passes at all, right? You can see it in the team, and then they like get into a groove, and you're like, oh wow, they just know where the other player is before. Yeah, like it's amazing, right? And so I feel like it's that same sort of flow. The other thing I was thinking though is like once you kind of allow yourself to settle in, is lock on to the people who are really paying attention. I find that so helpful. I will scan the crowd, and there's your eye contact people. And I've had times where there's an eye contact person, and I've shared something like a heartfelt story, and you can see tears welling up in their eyes. And I just start speaking right to that person. Like, it's amazing what it does, because people can feel even if they can't see them, they feel the emotion in you speaking to them with your whole heart, and the whole crowd feels it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What I'm thinking of too is like I'm always the person who I'm going to like really connect with the person on stage just because I'm like, this is such a hard thing and I want to give you as much attention as humanly possible because I know
Right.
you're probably freaking out. And every single speaker, like they always look at me.
Because you give good eye contact.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like so creeped out. I'm like, there's other people here, but like I'm like sitting there so attentive and like, yes.
See, I always try to kind of scan across the crowd for like multiple areas, and then I'll switch around. The only thing that I've run into though is like depending on the setting, if they have the bright light, if they're filming
Mhm.
and they have bright lights towards you, it's so bright you kind of almost feel like you can't see
Yeah.
people properly. That's a whole, I like that scenario less, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm speaking to like the abyss.
Yeah, and you don't know like how they're receiving it either.
The response, there's a lot
Yeah.
of like back and forth response. It's like I always think about connection and communication, it's like a dance, right?
Yeah.
And if have you ever done ballroom dancing
I wish.
or like salsa? I did it
Salsa,
in
yeah.
Oh, good. Salsa dancing, the Latin and the ballroom dances. I did a lot in university because, anyways, we had an amazing dance teacher in our kin program, actually. And it taught me so much about, like, I always did a lot of dance with gymnastics, but like individual, right? Versus learning ballroom and learning like the cues of how to feel a person. Like, if someone's leading you, like, allow them to move your body and like just go with them. Like it's such a beautiful thing. Anyways, I find that this communication and connection is the same way. You have to give this allowance for like real to be adaptable in the moment. It's like I drop a joke, it doesn't I've had a scenario where I dropped a joke and the crowd was crickets. Like it did not lend well. It was a horrible feeling inside. But then I was able to kind of recover it by making a joke about my bad joke. You know what I mean? And then everyone kind of laughed. So that felt good. But the point is, there's times when I've dropped a joke and the crowd is roaring. In my brain, I'm like, mental note, they love that kind of humor. So I'll just like sprinkle it in throughout, whether or not I planned it, I will sprinkle it in because I know that it's landing well with that crowd.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's so like how much how adaptable you need to be with that because like if I said a joke and it didn't land, I'd just be like paralyzed. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna leave then. Bye. Where it's like you recovering from that is so interesting to me because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'd just be. And it's so funny too how much your momentum or lack of momentum can just spiral into the rest of your speech. Or even like I was at a comedy club maybe a few years ago and this poor girl
Oh no.
no one was laughing at her jokes and then she just like started like her voice was cracking and it was just going downhill and it was, oh my gosh.
That's
I
awful.
feel so bad. See, this is why I want to be attentive to people because it's like, oh my gosh, you go, sister. Like, oh,
Yeah. That's hard. That's hard. Oh man. Well, my joke scenario, in case you guys are interested, was is at an award ceremony. And I kind of really looking back, I was like, it just wasn't the right age range. It's when you drop a joke that's whether you're like a boomer crowd, millennials or Gen Z, it's like who's the crowd, right? Because I was like, well, first of all, I was just wondering, will the real Slim Shady please stand up? And everyone's
I
just like,
repeat.
yeah. And then it's like dead silent, and I'm like, Slim Shady? And then I'm like, there's no Slim Shady fan. I'm like, wait a sec. I knew people in the crowd, so I like called out one of my friends who I knew would be fine with it. I was like, I know you're a Slim Shady fan. I'm like, get your, like you get up out your seat. And then like the one table kind of like backed me up, and it got me out of the hole, right? But it was just so funny, right? Like I'm like, oh, that was dumb. There's too many people who like don't know who's.
Oh, I'm curious what the crowd was. Doesn't everyone know Slim Shady?
I thought so. I thought so. No, I think it was older. So I think the crowd, like there were some millennials, but there
Oh,
were definitely a
you
lot
need
of.
you needed to make a Beatles joke.
Exactly. If I had made a
Yeah,
Beatles joke, it would have landed way better in that
there
crowd.
you
But
go.
I don't know. I just made a millennial joke, right? Anyways, it's no big deal. Other than all I'm saying is sometimes that adaptability in the moment can be like, even if you can just find someone in the crowd, it can kind of help you recover your confidence.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to touch on the point of feedback. So, something that we do in our clinic setting is we do a debrief at the end of every shift. And what that looks like is what went well as a team, just a quick 5 minute what went well, what didn't go as well or didn't go as we hoped, and what could we do better or what could we learn from this? Okay. So, really quick way to create self accountability. And we try to get our team to focus on things that they can take ownership for. So I'm not going to say what went well by saying like, well, what went well today? Well, it was sunny out. That's outside of your control. That's not, you need to be like, what went well for you? Oh, I never missed a phone call today, whereas the previous day I did. I don't know. That's just a random example, right? And what could I have done better? Well, I left someone on hold for too long. What would I do differently next time? I would split the way that I interact with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's in our clinic setting, but I use that same model for when I'm doing speaking. So, I talked about practicing. I have some go to people that I was like, hey, can I do my keynote for you? And I just deliver my keynote to my one friend, and he would like be taking notes as I'm going and listening attentively. And I'd go through the whole thing as if I were on stage. And then I'm like, okay, hit me with it. Like, what did you like about it? What was good about my delivery? What would you give me a recommendation on improving on? And you talk about body neutrality. This would be like feedback neutrality, where you're like, you need to take the feedback neutral, knowing that the person that you're asking to help give you feedback beforehand, or if you have someone in the crowd during real time, you can do this after your real event, or if it was videoed, right? You can do this for yourself if it was videoed, and go through that same sequence. You always start with what did you like? What went well? What did you do awesome? Because you need to reinforce that in your brain. You're actually really good at this. What are the things you're good at? Okay. People want to skip that step. Do not skip that step. So he gave me feedback. I'm just saying about the first time I did it. He gave me feedback. He's like, you're really dynamic and you really speak from the heart. That emotion comes through. That's like awesome. Keep doing that. Your stories were great. They applied really well to your points. I'm like, sweet. Yes, nailed that. Then he's like, my biggest recommendation for you is you speak really fast. And it's not even that I was nervous speaking fast. I just tend to speak fast. So he recommended, and this is a person who has experience in speaking a lot. He was like, leave when you have a really like good point, pause, let their brains assimilate, let it sink in. Whereas I want to like move to the next, to the next, to
Yeah.
the next. Because I'm like, I don't want them to be bored. I got to keep feeding them
Yeah.
information. Right. And quite frankly, once you learn about, you will have people who want to hear you speak faster. They're the people who put you on 1.5 times speed when they listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
Or They put you on 2 times speed because they just want to, get through this 30 minutes in 15.
Yeah.
You can do that. The people who want to hear you faster, they will find a way to do that. But there are a higher percentage of people where you're giving them, it's like drinking from a fire hose, and you're just giving them too much too fast. So his feedback was like, give yourself pauses after your big points for them. And I was like, oh, that's great feedback, right? So that's an easy change. So now what I don't want your brain to do is whenever you're in a feedback scenario, whatever it is, whether it's with your workouts or in a public speaking scenario, is maintain that neutrality so you can say, I'm getting this feedback so that I can continually improve. The mistake would be the person gives you feedback and you're like, oh, frig, I know I suck at this. I'm not a good speaker. I knew it. People do it. That's what happens. And that's what keeps you trapped in thinking like that's letting the fear win.
It's a cop out.
Yeah. Or just even maybe it's a cop out sometimes, but then other times it's just literally giving into the fear of it, right? And letting that control you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about anything else? I know it's like our time is basically up. Are you happy with this episode? How do you feel?
Cool. I don't know if you're asking the viewers, but if you're asking me, I thought that was fantabulous and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I was looking for feedback from you. What went well? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think we flowed in our conversation really well. I think we made some really good points. And by we, I mean you.
You made some great points. And what could we do better? Leave it in the comments. We want to know. We want you guys to interact. Please tell us, what are you loving about the show? Go onto YouTube, pop in a comment. What do you feel like you would love to hear about or something that we could do better and improve on? Because we are here to serve you.
Tell us we talk too much. Yeah, tell us we talk too much.
If we talk too fast, if you want us to have more pauses, you got to pop that on the comments. That's on you. We love and appreciate you. Make sure you share the show, right? Share the show. Haley, go share it right now. In the meantime, be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.